The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
Hey there, malcontents. This here's the malcontent. How are you doing? And we've kind of stepped up the pillow talk game as we have Yoda Cam here. Yes, we have Yoda has his own camera now. So there you go. And yes, as you just saw, it is a live camera. And Yoda is semi passed out. So not that anybody really cares. If you kind of just like, what the heck, right, with all this mask, people get mask acne. Just had case of mask acne this week, like flipping like I was 17 again. So anyway, hello, malcontents, and welcome on all of the channels that you're on. So welcome to our Facebook and our Twitter and Periscope and YouTube and Twitch audience. If mass acne is absolutely the worst. If you... This is friggin' fantastic. There you go. This is worth the price of admission. And of course, I set up the camera. You can see Yoda's face. I go in the air. What does he do? Like 2 seconds later. Here, let me just stretch out so you can't see my face. Hello, hello. Hello. Hello, Agent R. How are you? So, Jason, I'm glad you like Yoda Cam. This is... I know we've done pillow talk and people were like, is that Yoda? Because they can hear him snoring in the background and there's all these questions, is that Yoda? Is that Yoda? And so, yeah, we're kind of stepping up the game a little bit here from a technology standpoint and making things, oh my God. See, because I can see him too, right? Normally I just can't see him. So you're seeing what I'm seeing. And, God, I wish there was a way. You know what? I'm wondering. I'm going to try something. I hope I don't kill the screen, the seed here. Shoot, I can't live pan it. I was going to see if I could pan the camera. There's settings where I can pan it before the stream is running, and unfortunately I can't pan the camera when the stream's running. So Yoda has a little bit of, sorry there, Bubba, I didn't mean to startle you, but now we got you back in frame. Anyway. So if you're not familiar with Pillow Talk is me and Yoda and pillows. And so that's what Pillow Talk is. And it's kind of an AMA. Yoda is totally invested in this conversation. It's a borderline AMA. It is kind of an Ask Me Anything, although I can't say that it's fully Ask Me Anything. I love that I can see your all comments from all the different channels here. I plan to talk about a couple of different topics. I kind of do pillow talk when I'm just not feeling going out into the field. I don't want to do the whole studio thing. But there's some topics I want to talk about or bring up. And so typically pillow talks aren't too ranty. It's really more of a discussion. And again, you can blow up the comments. And when you blow up the comments, well, don't blow them up so fast I can't read what's going on. But when you blow up the comments, in this case, I can actually see in real time and respond in real time to your comments, which is really cool. All right, so with that, why don't we get started? There was a stat that Joe Biden tossed out that in 2020, 40% of black-owned businesses in the United States have failed, closed their doors, and like me, and if anybody's kind of following, in fact checking things, we fact check both candidates, and we've called out both candidates. Just saying, and we fact check that, as did other people, and it's true. About 40% of black-owned businesses have closed in 2020. There were about a million black-owned businesses in the United States at the start of 2020, and there's about 600,000 now. So this is a highly disproportionate number of businesses that have closed related to C disease. And this is just this continuation of the inequality and the systemic racism that is built into the system. And I continue to say, the system isn't broken. The system works perfectly. You have these issues of redlining. It is harder for them to get financing. We know that the Triple P program, hi, business owner, Triple P, it's like, just don't even get me started. And the Triple P program was hard for small businesses, period. If you were a minority owned small business, the deck was even stacked against you further. And we also know that this mini depression, right? Because the numbers we had when we had at the basement exceeded anything in our modern times. You would have to go back to the 1930s. So we had this mini depression, and like for a quarter, and now we're still in recession, in a relatively deep recession. It has a disproportionate impact because the people that have been impacted the most by this are people that are generally on the lower income scale, in the service industry. And so when their wallets are thin, the businesses that they support hurt because people aren't going in and supporting those businesses. And there is this huge impact. And when you have all these business failures, it's not going to come back quickly. This isn't something like, oh, there's going to be, a waving of a magic wand and boom, we're going to have all of these businesses back. And it's just another whack in the kneecaps to the black community in the United States. The other thing that should just be telling, right? There's a million owned black businesses. If you include mixed race, about 15% of the United States is black. Then you get into the proportion of numbers, there should actually be a higher number. And there are so many reasons why those, and we had this in this this video that we had made, and one of these days I'm going to play it on the show again, and I would really like to kind of get some discussions going on that, which is this challenge of a generation. If you're seeing Yoda kind of like twitching and moving and stuff, he's dreaming right now. We might get some pug barks if he gets a really good dream going. We may get some pug barks here. So, I don't know if I'm seeing I just saw a comment, so I don't know if I'm seeing everybody's comments here. Anyway, that was one thing that was on my mind and that I wanted to talk about. The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about before we kind of get into C disease, I want to talk about the election here. And I'm going to pull this up from 538. This is the most recent 538 snake map. That's what they call it, the snake map that's there. And I know some people right now are already, you can't trust that. The polls were all wrong. That's not the discussion we're having here. It's a little bit of discussion. It's not the discussion we're having here, though. I like this visual. And the reason that I like this visual is you have this very clear line, right? The 270 line. And then what they're showing here is if you go to the very top of the snake and you have that darkest red part, that is the side that is on the GOP for Trump. And as you go down the snake, it gets less and less secure until you kind of get into the battleground states. And that's more I want to talk about. And then it turns blue. And then as you go down the stake, it gets darker and darker blue. And those become the really secure states or districts for the other candidates. And so if you go all the way at the very, very top there, I believe that is Wyoming, and that little tiny nub that's at the very top. And if you go all the way to the bottom on the other side, that's Washington, D.C. Basically for Wyoming to vote for Biden this election, hell would have to freeze over. For Washington, D.C., to vote for Trump in this election, hell would have to freeze over. And then, again, as you go, right? So we all on the same page now, I hope? So this is why I like this graphic. If you follow the snake, you can go, this is a firewall state. And what I mean by a firewall state is that it is going to take something monumental, right? Some huge October surprise or some huge October event for that state to flip to one candidate or the other. And then you can look at that other side of the snake and go, okay, all that stuff is secure. And then you can kind of look at the stuff in the middle then and start having a conversation on the prospects of those and then identify what really are the battleground state. So if we follow the side for Trump, the firewall is Texas. Texas isn't going to go blue. I know there's stuff that's been written, it could and blah, blah, blah. Texas isn't going to go blue. It is going to take a major event, a huge October surprise for Texas to go blue. So anything from Texas and moving on up, you're on Team Trump, you can go, that's secure. If you follow the snake the other way and you get to Nevada, Nevada's the firewall. Nevada voted for Clinton in 2016. Nevada is a blue state. And you can rage against that all you want. Nevada's a blue state. Right? Neither candidate is really even treating it as a battleground state at this point. It's been written off. They may have some visits or whatever. And I know like Trump had some earlier visits in there, but the needle's not going to get moved. So anything that is then past Nevada is then secure for Team Biden. And I know some of you are probably going to go, I don't know, whatever. Iowa is a true battleground state. Iowa will almost certainly go to Trump, but it could go to Biden. If at the end of the day, when all the votes are counted up, if it were to flip to Biden and you're like stunned and shocked at what happened, you haven't kind of been looking at the objective picture. That isn't for me to say, hey, Iowa's going to Biden. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the possibility is there, and it is a legitimate possibility. Right? Could Texas go to Biden? Yes, there is a chance there. But it's going to take something huge. But Iowa is in play. And then you get into Ohio, and Ohio is in play. And Ohio and Ohio is like flickered. It flickered blue, and then it went red again, and it flickered blue again. And Georgia's doing the same thing. Georgia flickers blue, and then it goes red, and it flickers blue again, and then it goes red. And so Ohio and Georgia are really probably the true battleground states. The next one is Maine District 2, because Maine and Nebraska distribute their... Joy, I don't know. I just saw your comment there. I don't know. Yes, total pug love, Raymond. If he is, I think he's wasting his resources and time. I think he's focusing on the wrong place in the snake. And I'll get into if I were Biden's team, where would I go? And if I were Trump's team, where would I go? Uh, so let me get back to that, what I was saying. Do you have Maine and Nebraska? They divide up their electoral votes. Maine District 2, I have said, written in my analysis, I haven't said, I think where New Hampshire goes, Maine District 2 goes. Maine District 2 went to Trump in 2016. Uh, I think Maine District 2 is going to go to Biden. I wouldn't bet money on it, but that's kind of what I'm feeling. And then you have North Carolina, then you have Arizona, then you have Florida, then you have Nebraska District 2. Nebraska District 2 was that close to going to Clinton in the 2016 election. And I think Nebraska District 2, which is Lincoln and Omaha, and like something like you may not be aware, like in Lincoln and Omaha, there have been basically, they're small, but there's been daily Black Lives Matters protests down there. They're generally not getting harassed by people or anything like that that's going on down there. And we've aired a lot of those protests, and they've gotten smaller as in other areas, but they're still going on. And those are more liberal pockets in the state. And I think Nebraska too will go blue. Then you have Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, of course, is the big one. And then you get to the firewall, which is Nevada. So my opinion is your battleground states are Iowa, Ohio, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, Pennsylvania. And I think, like, if I'm Team Trump, I'm defending Iowa, I'm defending Ohio, I'm defending Georgia because I really don't think Georgia's blue. I don't. I am trying to hold on to North Carolina. I am trying to hold on to Arizona. I am throwing almost everything that I can into Florida and Pennsylvania, especially where their war chest, the Trump's war chest, the dollars they have available is almost half of what Team Biden has. They don't have as big a monetary resources that they have there. Likely make who will actually make it to the polls, and how will overcome all the suppression and cheating. Well, I think we're already kind of seeing people overcoming the voter suppression. Kimberly, I think you've brought up a really good point, and Kimberly, and I think we'll talk about that, and I'll talk about why I think we're already seeing people overcoming that. The other thing, it's getting harder and harder to do an October surprise, and those things are tied together. Trump can't win without Florida. Trump can't win without Pennsylvania, especially without Florida. Again, unless there's just some huge event or we have some Belarusian style ballot stuffing cheating thing going on, can't win. Joe Biden has a path to the White House actually without Florida, and interestingly, without Pennsylvania, and without North Carolina or Georgia. If he can pull the two districts and he can pull Arizona, then he has a path to the White House. Trump has to thread the needle a lot more closely. If I were Team Biden, because I have double the dollars, so I have more resources, I am going to, defend Pennsylvania. I am going to fight for Florida. I'm going to fight hard for Arizona. I'm going to fight hard for North Carolina. And I am going to be a thorn in their side in Georgia, Ohio, and Iowa. I'm going to put just enough resources in there to force them to defend. And if I have enough money left over, I'm going to put a little bit into Texas. Not that I think it's going to move the needle, but I want them to have to do rallies in Texas. I want to force them to do ad spends in Texas, right? I'm Team Trump. I'm operating with less dollars. Do I want to throw some stuff in Nevada and maybe be a thorn in the side? Yeah, maybe kind of poke on that firewall state. But I need Pennsylvania to win, and I need Florida to win. And Florida is just, its own level of wow, right, every single time. So, Kimberly, you had your question. Nah, Shell, no problem that you're late. So, Kimberly, you had the question. If I pause, you see me look over, I'm just reading, catching up on your comments. 21 million people have already voted. 21 million Americans have already voted. That's why it's getting harder and harder to move the needle if there is an October surprise. So all of this, oh, they're going to steal the election and cheating and they're sending fake ballot. What this has done is this has just made people go, gee, okay, and they're going to vote as early as possible, and they are taking the most secure path that they can to assure that their vote is getting counted. And that's what you're seeing. Kyra, thank you for sharing that. That is great. Florida. I don't know. I don't know if you go in Florida because you're a longtime malcontent, because I've written Florida that way many times. We used to do Moronic Monday, and I was on the brink of just like naming it Moronic Florida, because every time, this is in the way, way, way before times, before 2020. And Moronic Monday was a day where we would just focus on stupidity in the news. And, we're just searching for stuff, stupid human tricks, right? And it was always Florida. Like Florida delivered every single week. Oh, Yoda's dreaming. He's not too snory tonight. I told him, I was like, dude, you need to be snoring because people think the pug snores are hysterical. Replying to Kyra Miller. Oh, Lindsay, we have no idea what an October surprise could be. There could be a ton of different October surprise scenarios. I know some people, knock on wood, Biden could get C disease and drop dead. It's 17 days away. It's the window for that to happen is closing, but that's a scenario that could happen, and of course then throw everything into a complete crisis, just as if Trump had died from, if he really has C disease, if Trump had died from that, that would have thrown just things completely on its ass, because the only people that can delay the election is Congress, and specifically the House. And Nancy Pelosi isn't going to delay the election, and states can't rewrite the ballots that quickly. And there appears to be like some checks and balances, but maybe not, right? It would probably be litigated to death, etc. So right now, so it goes back to what I was saying. I think people on their own are kind of going around and disconnecting the potential to cheat in the states where they're able to go ahead and take action. Here in Washington State, it's been unprecedented. So a lot of the ballots have gone out through Washington State. Here in King County, the ballot boxes are filling up. This far out from the election, it doesn't happen. And what that's also kind of showing is that people are not entrusting the U.S. mail, right? These seeds were planted of, we're going to delay the mail, we're going to delay the mail, we're going to delay the mail. And so people are like, fine, I'm just going to go put my ballot in this state ballot box. And I know that my ballot then is going to get from the state. Because here in Washington State, when we submit our ballot, we're all by mail here. We've been mail here about a decade. We get a little piece that we tear off from the top of our ballot, and then you can go online and then track your ballot and make sure your ballot was counted, and make sure that as it was counted is what you actually voted for. It's actually a really good system we have here. Oregon has been vote by mail also for years. And people in Oregon and Washington are really flummoxed by, people, oh, they can change. It's like, it's infinitesimal, the number of incidents that are there. And when you look at the incidents that we know about so far, it is almost across the board the Republicans that are the ones trying to put the thumbs on the scale. There was the one in Pennsylvania, oh, these 9 ballots, they were naked ballots. The Republicans fought in court to have naked ballots thrown out, not counted, like thrown out metaphorically speaking, not counted. And these ballots were naked ballots. The ones in Pennsylvania, 8 of the 9 were naked ballots. There was one that wasn't. And so basically they were improperly thrown out by putting them in the trash. That's the crime, right? Because there was no crime. It was investigated, and there was like it was a mistake. And again, this was what the Republicans wanted. We don't count naked ballots. Okay. And now all of a sudden, when it bit them in the rear end, it became a problem. The West Virginia, where they were changing the ballots in West Virginia. Yes, the mailman was changing the ballot registrations, people registering to vote, changing them from Democrat to Republican. Right? We don't talk about that part. Then you had the 112 ballots that were found in a trash dumpster in Kentucky in this Jeffersonville or well, guess what? That is a suburb of Louisville, Kentucky, and Louisville, Kentucky is as blue as you can get within Kentucky. So what a shock. In the blue county in one of the bluest towns, a mailman is throwing out the ballots that are showing up in the mail. And the way that they figured out is people were calling, hey, I don't have my ballot. Where's my ballot? Then you have this other guy in Pennsylvania where somebody kind of dropped a dime on him because it's like, hey, I was like over at their house and I know they're a mail person and they have sacks of mail at their house that they haven't delivered, and there were ballots in that sack of mail. And what do we find out? They're a far right boogaloo boy. And then we had the reports of voter intimidation in Virginia, right, where we have these vote observers. Now, here in Washington State and King County's announced that they are going to have security guards at all 70 of the drop boxes on Election Day. And on top of that, there will be election workers. There's always election workers at those drop boxes. And then they are picking things up. I know we're doing our ballots tomorrow. Got the ballots out of the mail. We're doing them tomorrow. I don't know if we'll drop them off tomorrow because, again, you have this cycle where doom. So I'll probably try to drop them off on Monday or Tuesday. But we're filling them in, and we typically don't. But, again, I've been motivated to drop it off early because, one, I want it to get counted early. And then, two, we just don't want to have any issues with the system. And we typically drop it off anyway. So, yeah, Shell, we covered the California fake ballot boxes, right? And the Republican Party says they're not going to make them go away. And of course, the question is, if you're a Democrat and if you put that in there, are the Republicans just going to throw out those ballots? And now, what I don't know, what I presume is you would have to open those ballots to find out what's in them, which then, of course, would be illegal, but good luck in proving that. So if you're in California and you're dropping your ballot box, make sure you're dropping it off at a secure location. One of the things also that the Republican Party was saying is, well, all these ballot boxes are inside and they're in secure locations. They're now saying we know that's not true because the first ballot box that kicked all of this off in the first place was the ballot box located outside of the Baptist church, not inside the Baptist church. So, look, this is what it comes down to. You've got a changing in demographics in the United States. And one of the states that highlights this most is Texas. Texas will be a blue state by 2028. It's an unstoppable force because the demographics in Texas are changing. The state is becoming more minority. You have a number of employers that are attracting more of this college educated because we know that Republican voters lean to be less educated. I'm not slagging out Republicans. I'm just saying what the data is. If you're getting about it, that's on you. That's not on me. They are typically lower educated. They are typically more white than they are minorities. They are typically more male than female at this point. And as you have this growing urban suburban belts, these areas tend to be more liberal, and the rural areas tend to be red. But even in the rural areas, what you have is the white populations are going down. This is the government data. The black population is going down. The indigenous population is going up slowly, but the Hispanic, the person of color population, specifically Hispanic, is exploding in rural America. And so the demographics are changing, and they know it. Another state where you're seeing this shift is Georgia. Another state where you're seeing this shift is North Carolina. And then probably behind, right, North Carolina, like you had Virginia and Nevada. And now what you've got is probably North Carolina will be the next state to kind of tip over. And then you will have either Texas or Georgia because of these changing demographics shift over. And then maybe South Carolina. Read some interesting stuff in South Carolina. Like South Carolina is not as red as you think. But South Carolina has a really, really hard firewall of maybe 45 to 48% of people there, they're going to vote Republican no matter what. So then if you doesn't take a whole lot of independents to move the needle, right? But those people are dying off. They're literally dying off. And through birth death and to a lesser extent immigration, the country is diversifying. Now, something that was interesting I was reading about. Well, Lindsay, I'm going to agree with that. I used to be a Republican. I don't know, like I used to be Republican. No, you were no. Republican. Bush 41. Grew up, 80s kid, Reagan, trickle down economics. I mean, Reagan, part of what Reagan ran on was essentially Make America Great Again, although he didn't call it Make America Great Again. America was a very wounded country coming into the early 80s. We had lost the Vietnam War. We were wrestling with this. We had had all of this upheaval in the 60s and 70s. We were in an inflation. I mean, imagine having a mortgage with a 16% interest rate and you're happy. Right? People can't even fathom that today. And that's where it was in the 80s. When I bought my first car myself, my parents, because I had a finance rate of 7.9%, my parents insisted on going to the dealer. I'm a grown-ass adult. My parents insisted on going to the dealer because they couldn't believe I got an interest rate that low. Because a car interest rate, was more like 12 or 13%. The car I bought after that, I got my interest rate was like 13%, and I was happy. Just think about that today. The United States was not in a great spot. There was Cold War fear was probably as strong as it was going into the duck and cover days of the late 50s. And the fear was on the same side with the Russians. You kind of went to bed going like, oh, maybe I don't wake up in the morning. And thank goodness I live really close to a high target area, so it won't hurt bad. It'll just be, what's that bright light? Bye. By the way, everybody in the Seattle area, yeah, we're like in such a huge like overkill area here. It'll just be, what's that? Bye. We have so many military bases. If Washington State was a country, it would be the most powerful military country in the Western Hemisphere by virtue of the number of nuclear weapons that are stored in Washington State. There's a massive amount of nuclear weapons because we have the huge submarine base here. I don't know if a lot of people know that. And plus we have aircraft carriers and this massive submarine fleet with the boomers and the nuclear deterrent. The malcontent. This malcontent was, when Bush 41, 1992, I couldn't vote for him, right? I voted for Ross Perot. I went third party, and Ross Perot is probably In American history, he is probably the third party candidate that moved the needle the most. I cried that night, 92. I thought we were doomed with Clinton. That is how, like, I was kind of moving more into that independent phase, obviously. And I literally cried. I just, that was a catastrophe to me that Clinton had won. But Bush 41 was, there was this whole grocery store thing and this really sharp recession. And we had he kind of made, in some ways, some of the same mistakes that Bush 43 did, in the sense that, the world was kind of like all behind us, and then he kind of blew that goodwill in the first Gulf War. And there was a lot of belief, and basically that played out, although Bush 43 played it out for reasons we still don't understand. And I hope I live long enough so that the archives get opened up, right, and the documents get declassified, and then we can just find out, why did we go to Iraq a second time? And that's a whole separate topic. But there was a really strong belief back in Gulf War One that we should have just gone to Baghdad, and we should have just planted the American flag there and been done with it. And there was a much bigger coalition then, and the world probably would have supported us. And then the other thing that I think that people were upset with, and it was one of the reasons that I couldn't support Bush 41 anymore, is, we told the Kurds and the Iraqi people, you go rebel against Saddam, and we will provide you weapons, and we're going to give you air cover. We're going to come in with our Air Force, we're going to give you air cover, and we're going to protect you. And we didn't deliver anything that we promised to them. We delivered nothing. And we allowed the Kurds to get massacred. I just remain amazed at how many times the Kurds allow us to screw them over again and again and again, and they still trust us. The other thing that came into that, again, is a very sharp recession, and there was an energy crunch. The price of gasoline went up really, really high, and that undid everything. And I remember in '96, I wasn't a Clinton fan, but I wasn't not a fan. And Clinton, did this thing where he looked right in the camera and he says, ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And the answer was hell yes. And the other thing I think that Clinton benefited from was you had the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, part of that started happening with Bush 41. Right, you had Reagan, who said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And then under Bush 41's watch, the Berlin Wall came down. There's a whole interesting story like that, because it was basically an accident. There was confusion on the East German side on the orders, where it was like, let the people. It was like, okay, they said let the people go through. And then like 6-7 hours later, it's like, what are you doing? And it's like, you said let the people go through. He said, no, this is not what we said. You got to close the border. And it's like, all the guards left. The people are already going across. There's people from Western Germany over on the other side of the wall now. It's like there is no like, oops, we made a mistake anymore at this point. And that's kind of how I'm really, really like summarizing it. You got the TLDR there. And I think he benefited from all of that, right? You had the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1994. Boris Yeltsin was this, like, Boris Yeltsin had a wicked drinking problem. Wicked. But Americans kind of, it wasn't because he had the drinking problem. There was just something kind of likable about this guy. And then, there was kind of this attempted coup, and Boris Yeltsin survived that. And it was like, yeah, we're the world superpower, and there's money, and the interest rates are down, and there's jobs, and we are booming, and things are better. And also the other thing is, sorry Republicans, you put up a lousy candidate in '96. Just a complete, like, it's Bob Dole, right? It was Bob Dole. Like, what does Bob Dole think? Why does Bob Dole talk in the third person? Go back and watch some of the Bob Dole stuff. He does. He totally talks. What does Bob Dole think? Well, Bob Dole thinks. I'm like, what? Who talks this way? I promise you, the camera is still on. You might have just seen a little ear twitch there. He he is alive. I promise you, it is not a fake stuffed pug. Um, Bob Dole was a robot. He was a terrible candidate. And then I was living in Texas. I think it was part of the other reason I got on the Ross Perot train. Right, Ross Perot is this Texas guy, and I was there. I was there when Ann Richards was governor, and then I was there as George W. Bush was governor. And when George W. Bush was starting his presidential run, one of the things he was talking about was, this whole No Child Leave Behind, and we're going to do in education what we did for the rest of the country. And like even GWB fans in Texas were just kind of like the education thing, dude. No, no, right? And we were already kind of dealing with his mutilation of the English language and just all these other questions. And then uh, and there was, of course, at this point, because I'm like a student of meteorology, the data on climate change for me at that point was starting to get pretty evident. And of course, you had this person who's very pro energy, and I say drill baby drill. That's not what the term that was being used. And that's kind of when my journey started to go to the other side. And then 2004. Yeah, I'll admit it. Curry was like Lurch, and Jason, sometimes what happens is like I don't know, like if you're saying it didn't pop up on this chat, that I don't know. I am under the impression that hey Dora, hi. I'm under the impression I'm under the impression not everything gets into the chat. And I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why. I don't have any filtering on. We just have it set up to go boom. What's interesting is I haven't seen anything from Twitch. We don't get much on Periscope. We had this one guy.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Yeah, we had a chud from on Periscope when we did our last one, but there's only a couple of comments and nothing bad on there. Three of our four channels are moderated, and then Periscope we get very, very few comments on there. It's interesting. We actually get a lot of eyeballs on Periscope. We get a lot of. I don't know if it's because the Periscope interface makes it hard to comment. And like I know like to keep track of your hearts because like if you get 185,000 hearts, something happens. And like I looked and like we had a crap ton of hearts up on there. Like we had like 25,000. I'm like, who are you people? So people watch and people heart, but they don't comment over there. Works for me. Yeah, we have all sorts of chud clips. I have buttons prepared if we have. There's my little thingy. I think it's cable stuck under something. There we go. Cable's still stuck under something. There we go. It's stuck under Yoda. Anyway, there's my little thingy here that I control things from. I don't even know where I was going. I was going with my whole history on how I became a liberal. I still, I don't identify with the Democratic Party. I consider myself an independent. But I definitely lean left, and I'm probably at the point of leaning left, probably as far to left as I have in my life. And I don't know, the pendulum may keep swinging that way, or it may swing a little bit the other way. It definitely has swung more in 2020. And it's not just an issue of dear leader, the golfer in chief. Part of that is for me in 2020 is just my eyes are opening up to, how the system is and witnessing it firsthand and seeing it first. It's one thing to read about it. It's one thing to kind of try to process it. Elbow's getting sore. It's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to try and process. Another thing when you see it firsthand and you talk to people who've been impacted and you talk with more than empathy, like you listen in your process and you acknowledge that everybody's racist and you acknowledge your own racism and which it's like everyone should just do it. It's so liberating. It really is, because then like the real work begins, and then your eyes open up to things. And that's kind of where I got where we're at. So, we were talking about, the sneaky here. And if you look at this, if you're a Trump supporter, I see this stuff, like look at how he's talking on Friday, right? And he's talking like a guy who knows he's already lost the election. We're seeing a number of Republicans that are starting to distance themselves. Now, full stop, we saw some of that in 2016. We saw some people hedging their bets, and of course, there was a surprise. So this brings up the question, well, the polls were all wrong in 2016. How do we know any of this is right now? They adjusted the polls, right? They're not going to do they learned a lesson. And so they're going to adjust their methodology, and the pollsters adjusted their methodologies. There is actually some concern among pollsters that they may have over pivoted. There's some pollsters that are kind of wondering, did we dial in too much Republican? And are we actually underestimating where things are at? We have to know that they know the internal numbers, right? We know that Republicans run their own polls, Democrats run their own polls. And if we look at some of the senators that are on the fence from an electoral standpoint, like Lindsey Graham, right? Lindsey Graham is like begging for money, literally begging for money, and is coming across as an individual who feels like they are truly fighting for their survival in their election in South Carolina. That regardless of what you think about Lindsey Graham, because I'm sure there's a lot of people watching me right now that think that he is a total
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
Regardless of what you may think of Lindsey Graham, he should be coasting to a win in South Carolina, even in 2020. And he's really fighting for his life there. And some of that's self-inflicted, but then some of that goes into what those internal numbers look like. You don't see Trump necessarily doing a whole lot of campaigning for some of these other senators that are fighting for their life. He is for some of them, but he isn't for other ones. And then you also see some, Ben Sasse grew a spine again. Of course, he's talked this talk, but then he never goes anything with it. But, he got into Twitter spat, and then, he's basically kind of like, screw you, man, right? So, he had this thing where he had this, in front of 17,000 people on a call, and he went on an 8 or 9 minute rampage against Trump, and then Trump blew him up. And then Trump blew him up again, like on Twitter, and then Sasse blew him back up again. You see Chris Christie basically going, I should have wore a mask. You need to take C to Z seriously. I'm wrong. I shouldn't have trusted what I was told. I shouldn't have trusted the way that they're running things, and you shouldn't either. And I predicted that Chris Christie would grow a spine. And he basically said, word for word, and that's kind of what I said. I spent 7 days in ICU thinking about a lot of stuff. And he, it's like, I bet when I put up the post about that, the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes that day. Of course, we understand that the impact from COVID can enlarge your heart too. Well, McConnell's going to win. I said that a long time ago. McGrath, the McGrath campaign it's one of those other things. Could McGrath win? There is a statistical chance that she could win. It is going to take something really huge for that to happen. And the clock is winding down because, again, you have the early voting aspect, right? People already have their ballots. We know that in Kentucky. People are already turning ballots in. Mitch is going to get another term. And the reality is, if you live in Kentucky, Mitch brings home the bacon. He's bringing in the pork. And Kentucky has a long, glorious history of voting against their own interests. Anybody objectively looking at, Trump, and I'm going to replace Obamacare, I'm going to replace ACA, I'm going to replace it with something bigger, better, bigly, huge, amazing, awesome. And like, where's the plan? 4 years. I have a plan. Well, what's your plan? You'll see. And it's like, you've been saying that for 4 years. Well, I got rid of the individual mandate. Okay, bravo. And by getting rid of the individual mandate, you made things kind of worse for everybody. You didn't make it better. You made it worse because taking away the individual mandate meant that the insurance companies weren't getting as much money, so they had to raise rates. So you hurt the insurance companies. Wow, your comments are coming fast and furious here. Well, yes, you need the Senate because you're stuck with Mitch. Here's the problem that I see. If right now, if you look at the numbers, it looks like the Democrats will win the Senate, and it'll be 51-49, so by one seat. And the Democrats have this glorious history of not lining up behind each other when stuff comes in. You have you have some of the people on the very far left, and you have some people that are on right on that Republican, or they're in Republican districts, and so are Republican states, so they have to walk the line, and so they aren't on board. Now, you don't see this with Republicans. You really don't. You don't have many of these moments where John McCain saved Obamacare because of his one vote. Let's not forget that, ever. John McCain was, may not agree with his politics, he may not agree with everything, whatever. At least he had honor. John McCain was an honorable man, and he did try to go across the aisle. And when he died, it's like that died in U.S. politics with him. And I will always have high respect for John McCain. Not saying I agree with his politics, but the man itself, I will always have high respect for him. And his wife. His daughter, on the other hand, man, she can be kind of crazy sometimes. He's surrounded by idiots. I hope people stop kissing ass. It's disgusting. Yes, I agree. It is totally disgusting. And we see a lot of ass kissing in the in politics and just kind of lining up behind things. I've read some pieces where people are saying that there will be maybe 5 or 10 Republicans who may work with Joe Biden if Biden wins. I'm not convinced by that. I'm just not. On the other side of the coin, if that really were to happen, then Mitch McConnell's kind of neutralized. And if you lose the Senate, is Mitch McConnell then the right person to be the minority leader? Now Mitch has said, I'm going to be a leader no matter what happens. But if you are the Republican leadership, do you then question, was Mitch so partisan that he brought us to this point now where we have lost the Senate? And is it time to bring somebody else in? But careful what you wish for, because the person they bring in may be even more insane than Mitch McConnell. Not insane, but more partisan. Mitch McConnell is anything but insane. He's corrupt to the core. He is a partisan hack. And he is the biggest problem in Washington, D.C., even over dear leader. But he's not stupid. That's for sure. Yeah. The daughter.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Yeah. Meghan McCain just is like, for every brilliant things she says. She says 7 things where you're just like, oh my goodness, what is going on? I don't know. I've lost a ton of weight, so I'm probably gonna have the Mitch McConnell neck here from all the weight loss that I had at some stage in my life. Yoda, dude, this is the like pillow talk. This is the quietest and the stillest and the calmest that Yoda has ever been. He usually is snoring, and you can hear him audibly snoring. And I guess you can see he is still breathing. I'm like looking at the camera, and yes, you can see that. No, there is not a dead bug on my bed. He's really out. I'm like, oh, sorry, bro. I didn't mean to startle you. No. Leave me alone, human. Congratulations, 100. I wish you didn't have that message. Like, whatever, restream. Yay, 100 messages. I don't know. I'm kind of spoken my piece here in. I think I've kind of spoken my piece here in Pillow Talk. Unless anybody's got questions, we can open up the floor to questions. Yes, you in the back with a question. Yoda. Yoda is camera, apparently. I had the right, he was laying and the camera was right on his face asleep. He's like, here, let me flop over and you can't see my face. Yeah, Yoda didn't choose the pug life chose him. If you're wondering if he's spoiled, I think your answer is right there on Pug Cam. I don't know, we'll give this a few more seconds, and then do you think there will be more civil unrest no matter who wins the election? Yes, I do. Yes. And yeah, the answer to that is just yes. I think there's people that are just looking for excuses. I think that there are some people that may have plans. And I just think there's going to be some people that, no matter what, there's going to be people unhappy. My view right now, November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. November 3rd, what we'll be doing November 3rd is we'll be in studio. We'll be tracking the election. We'll be doing the results. I would love to have a co-host. I've been talking to a couple of people about having a co-host. But I don't think we'll have a co-host by then. And even if we identified somebody at this point, to kind of like, hey, and you're going to co-host an election night, and maybe we got 1 or 2 shows under our belt. I just think that's kind of a recipe for disaster. It's tough enough for me to kind of do things on my own. Wow, Deborah, no, what I understand is the security guards are only going to be there election day here in King County. That's King County, Washington only, right? I know that I have an audience that's all over the place. So we're only talking about King County, Washington. They said they're going to be unarmed. I saw that Michigan has passed a law, that you cannot have weapons at a polling place. It's kind of like such a sad state of affairs. We need to have a specific law for this. Jason Omari's talked about, having me on the show, on Converge and interviewing me and getting my thoughts and stuff. We talked about that on 923 on the air. So I'm not saying anything that wasn't secret there. We'll see. I'm sure they have their election plans. So anyway, we're in studio, and we'll roll until there's a decision, or until, okay, it's clear we're not going to get a decision tonight. I think the whole issue of the mail-in ballots, and we may not know. I'm starting to think that's going to be a little overstated, because now Pennsylvania has said, no, you can't start counting the ballots until election night. If either candidate, it's kind of like you look at Florida. We're probably not going to Pennsylvania, but you're going to get the direction of that the wind is blowing in Pennsylvania. if Trump wins Florida, if Trump wins North Carolina, if Pennsylvania is a question mark, and you go into the West Coast and Arizona is a question mark, you could probably go to bed going, we might have 4 more years of Trump. On the other side of the coin, if Biden wins North Carolina or Biden wins Florida, it's not and, it's or Biden wins Arizona, then you could probably go to bed going, we got President Biden at that point. Then my plan is for the fourth is probably out streaming wherever the sides are protesting. And then potentially the fifth, and then play it from by there. But that's kind of the plan right now for Election Day and the 2 days after. And we'll just see what happens. I don't think, will people be protesting here? Yeah, I think people will be protesting regardless, and I think people will be protesting here in Washington State. But anybody in Washington State right now is like, I'm going to wake up on the 4th, and Washington State is going to be a red state that voted for Trump. You are too high on the Trump Kool-Aid, right? This state's not going red. It's like, no. This state's going to be blue. The end. So I don't know if you're going to have necessarily a whole lot of protest here, because there isn't going to necessarily be a whole lot to protest. Now, on the other side of the coin, let's say it's looking like it's very, very clear that we're that there's an attempt to steal the election, then kind of all bets are off. I think Portland has a bigger chance of being a shit show because there's so much tension down there. And you have all the Proud Boys and stuff that apparently like to live in Vancouver, Washington, but then for whatever reason like to drive across the border into Portland to stir shit instead of doing it in Vancouver. I don't know why. But that's apparently what they like to do. Now, if you look at other states, like Pennsylvania, Florida, Ohio, Georgia, these are the state, like Atlanta, right? This is a battleground state. If people in Atlanta feel that they've been cheated or whatever, because we know that there's been a ton of protests in Atlanta, and there has been a shooting in protest in Atlanta, and there's been, buildings burned and vandalized in Atlanta. And we know that the left and the right have kind of engaged each other in Atlanta. So you have Georgia that's potentially a hotfill. You have Louisville that is potentially a hotbed by virtue of just everything that's going on there. Wisconsin, is another state because, Wisconsin did the whole, like, they went all in on the Tea Party, right? Scott Walker, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like Wisconsin they've had it up to here. Well, absolutely, Pam, right? And that's what I'm getting to. Yeah, I've kind of heard that things got spicy down there in PDX tonight. That's the other thing I guess I kind of wanted to talk about. It's not the spiciness. If you're seeing kind of less and less streams, both in Seattle and people out streaming, both in Seattle and both in Portland. In Portland, there's a much stronger presence, and I've talked about this group before. I've written about them once. It's the Pacific Northwest Youth Liberation Front, and they are 100% anti-streamer. They're anti-streamer to the point, they harass and umbrellas, and they don't want any streamers at all. And their argument is that it's for their protection and their security. And if you try to have a logical discussion of there are, every officer has a body cam and they're on, and there's traffic cams. And here in Seattle, they're using the traffic cams, right? They're HD, and they use those traffic cams, and they're zooming in on people's faces, and they're zooming in on license plates. Now, the law says they're not supposed to do it. How do you know they're doing it? Because the traffic cams are public and people have seen them being used this way because the feeds are public and people look at the public traffic cam. They're like, whoa, they've been zoomed in on protesters' faces and on license plates on the car brigade. So we've also seen, chatter on the police scanners in Seattle when they're not using scrambled communications about, hey, all officers or whatever, you need to come in and, download your video, drop your video in. So we know that they have all these other resources. And part of the other argument is there's some organizations that support protesters, and what they're saying is that the video that's being shot is helping in the prosecutions. On the other side of the coin, I've worked with the ACLU and I've worked with the National Lawyers Guild, and they have reached out to me sometimes going, hey, we saw you had video for this. Can we use it? Or can you give us, can you provide us these chunks here? Because they're using it for cases to defend people, or they're using it in cases, for instance, on the TRO, on the contempt filings. I know some of our video was used for that because the ACLU asked for our video. And we're like, there it is, have at it. So we know that it's been used both ways. The Pacific Northwest Youth Liberation Front has really created this chilling atmosphere for the streamers. And so the streamers are just backing off. And here in Seattle, they don't have as much as as strong as a influence as they do in Portland. In Portland, they have a very huge influence. But they do have influence now in Seattle. And what you're seeing, like, for instance, I was watching some streams last night, and, there are streamers who operate very ethically and work in a way where they're telling the story and they're showing the before, during, and after, and they're doing it in a journalistic and ethical way, but also doing it in a way to be sensitive to protesters' identities, and it's still not good enough. Like I saw people last night that I think are highly ethical being heavily harassed. And then what's happened, there's been some incidents where streamers have been chased off, and there are other groups that are taking advantage of it. You had this clearing out, right? This raid, this pushing out, and the raids and the homeless outside of the Justice Center. And I guess BLM Ribs, who we put on blast, was somehow involved with this, which I'm just like, oh my God, we put no more Venmo to BLM, like, ever again, ever. Like, I thought like a lot of people were like, wait, because when all this happened, it was like, wait a minute, there's a different thing. I was like, why would Riot Ribs do this? Like, no, it's a different group and they're sketchy. But there's groups that are coming in. And then some of the right-wing groups, particularly in Portland, they're coming in with their own streamers. And then they're controlling the narrative. I mean, that's what it's all about. And then we had this situation that happened here in Seattle where SPN was down because they were on a fort. And yeah, SPN was on YouTube and Facebook, but now you're assuming that the watchers of the watchers actually are smart enough to figure that out. And I think sometimes people give them too much credit in the technical department, or thinking, that far ahead. And so SPN was down. There was no Seattle Protest Network. There were no streamers on the ground. And the Seattle police came in and arrested everybody. They, medics, everything. And I know that one person showed up after the fact when the arrests were going on, and then a couple of photographers showed up that was there, and I'm not getting into specifics, but one of those three people was where they were like pointing, like, arrest them too. And they, they're not even in the shit, so to speak, at this point. Everyone's going. And the only reason they get arrested is when the person trotted down to arrest them and reached down for the zip tie handcuffs, realized they were out of zip tie handcuffs. And then it was like, you go away now, which by the TRO of 810, SPD can't do that. Same thing and we covered this where where in Portland the PBB pushed both streamers and real journalists, whatever you want to call that, right, push them almost a block away from these arrests that were going on, with people going, you can't do this, TRO, and the one officer on camera. I don't care about the TRO. When the law doesn't care about the law, you have problems, America. You have problems. What are they hiding? It is for security is a language of an oppressor. My views are very consistent on the First Amendment. I try to operate, well, you turn the camera. It's just like, that one cracks me up. You turn the camera. Yeah, whatever. We've said this, and I know Ian has said this so many times. 75%. Why don't you show their faces? You're hiding their faces because they're criminals. 75% of not showing people's faces is because there's people like Andy No that are just crawling around to figure out who they are and then put them up and dox them. And then people get death threats and get their employers contacted. And that's what it's about. It is more about the scary...
These are shut.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
That's what it's about. And it's about protecting people from chuds. That's the real thing. And medics in particular, and Car Brigade in particular, are really heavily targeted. They're super heavily targeted. And we know that. We know that as streamers. And so that's what 75% of it is. The reason I've just I wanted to, I guess I'll pillow talk about this too. We go to last Saturday. Last Saturday we did the SPOG rally, and I guess I'll probably talk about this and then I'll close it up. And not just the SPOG rally, but it's about the future of the TANGO. And there was this incident, right? We have the we're using her voice.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontents Antifa. Fuck you.
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
Yeah, her. Not the malcontents Antifa. That's somebody repeating what somebody said that the microphone didn't pick up clearly, but the second to last person in there before dear leader. She, after that happened, if you were watching the stream, there were a couple of people that were on the spot there defending me. Mods and admins can tell you that after Saturday, we got messages from the right praising our coverage. People that were there for the Back the Blue were actively messaging us, praising our coverage and thanking us for being there. We had people on the left praising our coverage and thanking us for being there. We had people on the right, one woman in particular made it very well known, very unhappy with our coverage. I don't think David Preston's probably very happy with our coverage, and Katie Davis-Cord gave me shit on Instagram, so she clearly wasn't happy with our coverage, but I'm not losing my sleep over that. And we had people on the left. We got a message. We got people on the left complaining about our coverage. You know what? Big win. That's a big win. You know what that tells me? It tells me we did our job right on Saturday, and that tells me we found our lane on Saturday. And it's taken us close to 4 or 5 months to kind of find our voice and find our lane. And if people on both sides of the spectrum are happy and people on both sides of the spectrum are unhappy, and I got to go home without a bullet hole in my body, it's a W. Or handcuffed. It's the other one. I'm not back of a police cruiser. And that's a W at the end of the day. And I think in that moment we found our lane. And that's why, some of the commentary just cracks me up to no end. Anybody on the political right, they're turning the cameras. You're certainly free to come out there with your own camera and go ahead and stream and find out just how hard it really is. Just walk around. You know how many real reporters, you know how many news stories you watch are shot on a cell phone? Like, seriously. A lot. Reporters shoot a shit ton of iPhone video because it's cheaper and faster for the news agencies to just have the reporter go there and iPhone the stuff than having a cam ops go there. Jason, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, and Jason, I agree. I think it is horrible, and it complicates things for everybody. It complicates things for streamers. It complicates things for protesters, and it creates this chilling environment, right? Of for people that are protesting, where they're concerned for their safety and not concerned for their safety, say, of getting arrested. You know, they're concerned for their safety to the point, well, I walk out my home or apartment door and somebody's going to put a bullet through my head because enough hate has been fed into the system and somebody read a little bit too much and then they decided to take things into their own hands. That's the thing that people are more worried about in that space. And of course, that's the purpose of what they want to do. I mean, the reality is that, and this is with so many other things, right? People think things are easy until they actually do it. You know, one of the experiences that I had, I got to perform in front of 2,000 people on a cruise ship. I won the privilege to perform James Brown's I Feel Good in front of 2,000 people on a cruise ship. I won a contest, and so they were doing this thing, karaoke, and like, I don't know, like 10 or 14 people win, and there are people I met on the cruise ship, and they were like, you should go do it. And I purposely did James Brown, because I'm like, they're never going to pick a Jewish white guy to win James Brown. And they picked the Jewish white guy to win James Brown. No, they did not make me wear blackface. And actually, it was one of those, like, you're not going to make me do, because this is a long time ago. And even then, I was like, I'm not doing blackface. So, all right. I've stood on the stage before this in front of thousands of people, not sang, but done presentations and stuff. So that part wasn't intimidating. But there was costume and wardrobe and dancers and rehearsal and focus marks and dance routines. And then there is, on top of having to know I feel good inside and out in my head to the point that I can do it with a spotlight on me and 2,000 people staring at me, that I'm then going to have to get off that stage afterwards and face my fellow shipmates. In that particular ship, the theater could see 2,000 people. And then there was like an opening number, and then there's a closing number routine. And it was like 12 hours. It was like a 12-hour day. And it wasn't just me. It was all the other people that won. And there's this one dude. He won like Frank Sinatra. He did the song I did. My Way was the song he was going to do. He looked like Sinatra. He sang like, just crushed it. That guy crushed it. And here's the crazy thing. I am still friends with two of the people that performed. And again, that's a long time ago, and we're still friends. And so I had this 12-hour experience of being like a star on a cruise ship, which of course in the entertainment world, that's almost rock bottom, right? The next step is the Holiday Inn. And I concluded at the end of that 12 hours, it was like, I totally get now why stars, fans, like they're, mentally ill and alcoholic and drug addicted. After 12 hours, I totally got it. Because then the other thing was, it wasn't over, right? Then it was like, oh, no, you got to do pictures. If people want to take pictures, and then I go stand there in my James Brown costume. People want to take pictures, and they got to take pictures and stuff. So we all went to one of the bars afterwards. We were out of costume at that point. Of course, people are still coming up. You guys did great and stuff. And there was one woman in that group, and she was underage to drink by like maybe a year. And the bartender, like, wanted to see her ID and stuff, and we were all just like, dude, just be a human being, have a heart. She's freaking earned a drink. When I say she's underage, not like, she's like 20. It's not like friggin' 15. It's like, be a human being. Just let her have a freaking drink, okay? She had a long day. She wanted a drink. She earned a drink. Let her, and he was a human being, for whatever that's worth. People think shit's easy until they actually do it. Streaming's not easy. Streaming is not easy at all. And in the environment, a protest environment, it's particularly complex because you just have all this stuff going on, which is why then it's like, why didn't you show this? Or why, sometimes I see in the comments, turn your camera and look at that. It's like, you might have seen a flick of something for 1 second out of the right, and then you're like, why aren't you showing that? It might already be over. I might have nothing to do. I might be reading the situation and seeing something that I think is going to be a lot more interesting forming up. Or I may just be wanting to stick with the group because, one of the things, particularly as a streamer, you don't want to be alone. Look at the times that I've been harassed. Look at the 2 clips where people have harassed me. In both of those scenarios, I'm not in a group. So, what does that tell me? Well, then I should probably stick closer to the protesters. And generally speaking, SPD doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. And if you've watched the streams, there is kind of this weird, it's like relationship isn't the right word, right? There are some streams, for instance, 923, 924. There were multiple times where I was behind the police lines, either because the police were basically like, we're not going to let you continue, down this route. You got to go here. And so I'm essentially embedded with the police officers, or bike cops are streaming past either side of me, and left alone. Same thing even on the 9/7 Spog March, right? I even commented when we were coming back from that 9/7 March, based on what I saw from the NLG observers, based on what I see in other streamers, that is like, wow, SPD at least seems to be listening to the TRO a little bit more. And that was especially after the terrible incidents on 825, right, where Omari got maced multiple times, they got whacked and pushed on the ground, they smashed Christina D's equipment. And then, October 3rd, I'm whacked with a baton, right? I'm kind of more towards the back of the group, and, and this one officer is like, keep moving, press. I'm moving. And if you watch the video, you actually see me passing I'm going faster than other protesters, right? I was targeted. It was just punitive. It's like when you being told, you're not walking fast enough, and now you're walking faster than other people in the group, and you still get whacked with a baton. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to go, well, this guy just had it out for me. And if you go back to that, he yelled at me a few other times, and I reached one point where I just kind of tipped the camera down, and I ran for about 30 seconds, like ran. I wasn't running like, because, oh my God, I'm afraid. It's just, I'm just going to put some distance between me and this guy. I'm going to move myself up, and that's it. Because for whatever reason, he's got a bug up his ass about me tonight, and I don't know what it is, and it's fine. I came home with a bruise that night. He hit me hard enough, kind of where the shoulder strap and the plate, right where that came down. He actually whacked me hard enough, because the next day I was like, man, I'm really hurting back there. And Dr. Mrs. I'm like, look at my back. And she's like, you got a bruise there. So, yeah, it was one hell of a whack. It was definitely a much harder whack than what Officer David B. or B. David gave me. That was definitely more kind of a let me know he was there. This was a lot more than let me know you were there. So it's all a lot harder. And then the last thing is like with me with Pole Cam. And I don't think a lot of people realize, particularly when things are spicy, right? I don't see what you see. And I say that on the streams, and it's like it seems to go in one ear and out the other.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
For that group of people. Pole cam, depending on the setting, could be 9 to 16 feet up. Generally, in a protest, if I think things are spicy, it's set at about 12 feet. Literally, this is the science that things have gotten to with pole cam. In Seattle, I have it at about 12 feet. When I was down in Portland, I started at 12 feet. But one of the things I learned when I was in Portland on 926 is in Seattle, particularly kind of like in the former CHOP in that Cap Hill area, I've run around with pole cam so much at this point. I unconsciously kind of know, for the most part, awning here, branch there, and I'm actually kind of ducking and weaving now without thinking about it. In Portland, I had it set at 12 feet, and if you're watching, like for about the first hour, I just snagging the pole on friggin' everything in Portland. And so I dropped it down to its lowest setting at 9 feet. On 10-3, they ran us through down a whole bunch of streets that I didn't know, that generally they haven't, there's been no protest, and everyone went down, and pole cam got the shit beaten out of it right that night. So, I am not very crazy. What's up to you? I am neither rich or suave, but I do appreciate it. And yeah, I actually understand more Spanish than you probably think. I firmly believe that the police unions, I'm not anti-union, but I do think that the police unions, right, they're this night, they're rotten to the core. And the qualified immunity, and it's so difficult to fire, a bad cop. Being a police officer is like one of the few vocations where you can just kind of screw up over and over and over again, and you still have a job. It's and then you don't have a national database of bad cops, and so somebody can transfer out, or just resign, and then they resign, so then it goes away. And ask a doctor, ask a nurse, ask a home health aide, air traffic controller. Imagine if air traffic controllers or pilots could screw up, right? And that the pilot union had the same level of power. If the pilot unions had the same level of power of police unions, would you get on a commercial airplane? I wouldn't get on a commercial airplane. I'd be like imminent death. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. You've all really pissed me off, so I'm going to depressurize the cabin right now. You had a choice in airlines, and you made the wrong one. The old robot chicken thing there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and the co-pilot won't stop touching my wheel, and it's really pissing me off. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your co-pilot speaking, and I just want to let everybody know that it is not the captain's wheel, it's the airline's wheel, and I can touch it if I want. And then the two passengers look at you and goes, well, that doesn't sound very good. And then the plane starts spiraling downward while you hear the captain of the plane saying over the PA system, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself. And we need a national database, right? But we also just need to revamp the whole system, right? The concept of protect and serve it's like it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And we had this incident that happened here with the guy with the flaming 2x2. And look, if somebody threw a flaming 2x2 in my lap in a car, I would almost certainly panic. I think just about anybody else would panic. And it was an officer with 1 year of experience. But the thing when I watched the video that came out of SPD that jumped out to me was when the initial engagement happened. The engagement was escalation, right? You know, opened up the thing, yelled out this command. There was no because it was at a distance. Like, hey, what's going on? How you doing today? There was none of that. It was just, I'm the police. Stop. And the guy yells, fuck you. And so what's the response to fuck you? Well, he closes the door, puts it in drive, and he stands on the gas pedal and roars up. And, now he's much closer to the individual and, the same thing and, escalates again. And what does the guy do? Turns and runs, and it happens so fast when you watch that video. I just don't think that there's any chance to even, react, and throws the flaming 2x2 into his lap. And then he has the vehicle in reverse, the vehicle's or neutral, so the vehicle's rolling backwards. Clearly can't see because you can see the body cam. The inside is filling up with smoke. He's got a burning piece of wood in the thing, and he, unloads his clip, it seems, fires a lot around. Like, I like how the SPD initial one, although they didn't say number of rounds was, there was weapon was discharged, okay? Weapon was discharged certainly implies one shot. Very carefully worded. I remember the whole Spog thing happened. Somebody said me like Spog was looking for a communications director. They sent me the link. I don't think they want me as their communications director, and I like to be able to sleep at night. And I know that's SPD and not Spog that did the thing, but once again, I kind of trusted in the way that they were reporting things and went on it, and then the video came out, and I was like, okay, so things kind of didn't go down the way that you guys said in the blotter or your Twitter, the way it went down. It went a little different. It's half truth. A lot of half-truths out of SPD comms. A lot of half-truths. He went in, hot. No, well, that's the wrong word. Really the wrong word. There was no pun intended in that. He went in and, it was an escalation. It clearly, it didn't work. If there was something like if always easier. I've never been a law enforcement officer, so I'll eat my own words. It's not easier till there. If there's anything I learned from watching that video, if you are confronting somebody with a burning piece of lumber, make sure your windows are rolled up in the car. That's definitely one of the things that I learned in watching that video. If the windows were rolled up, that isn't to say that he may have hit it with enough impact to break the window, but if anybody's tried to break a car window, especially say with just a piece of wood, it's really hard. Or watch somebody try to break a car window, it's really hard to break a car window. It's really hard, especially in the newer vehicles. The glass is just so much tougher in cars these days, and that's one of my takeaways. Confronting somebody with a flaming piece of wood, maybe use the PA from the inside. Hey, Seattle Police Department, you with the flaming piece of wood. How you doing today? Fuck you. Okay. Maybe then at that point I'm going to ask for backup. It just seems as though if you had a couple of more officers there, that would have played out differently, and there would have been some opportunity. At the end of the day, the suspect was taken in custody. And at the end of the day, firing blindly through his windshield, there was no innocent person shot in that process, which is probably the most important thing of all, followed by that the suspect didn't burn an innocent person or assault an innocent person having to go by with a piece of wood. And those are probably, at the end of the day, the most important things, and that the officer was not severely injured. Burning... I did time as an EMT. I've seen things that I probably will never talk about, and getting burned is high on my list. Like, borderline of a trigger for me. So, well, I'm not going to argue that. When I watched the video, he definitely looked like he just went into total panic mode, right? And what was the reaction? The reaction wasn't, let me get this flaming piece of wood out of my vehicle. The reaction wasn't, let me get out of the vehicle, right? His reaction was to grab his service weapon and just start firing blindly, which tells me that's an automatic reaction. That tells me that's what's been drilled in their training. And if that is how they're trained in that scenario, his training was ineffective, right? Because that wasn't the right thing, and that wasn't the right reaction. It seems to me the right reaction, again, would have been, I need to get this burning piece of wood out of my car. On the other side of the coin, it's real easy to armchair quarterback this. I think for most of us, including yours truly here, if somebody threw a burning piece of wood in my lap in a car, especially as engulfed and as engaged as a piece of wood is, I'd probably panic too. I probably would not have. I would probably have a couple of seconds of like, holy shit, what do I do? Like, this scenario has not been covered, and I am pretty sure that police don't get trained for. Okay, today at Police Academy, we are going to cover what to do if a burning piece of wood is thrown into your lap while you're inside a police cruiser. I would be really surprised if that scenario is covered in police training, to the point that you have an automatic. So what I observed is that the police training is, when in doubt, pull gun and start shooting. That then kind of equates for what we see over and over and over again when we see these videos and we see these incidents where we're just like, oh my God, why did the cop just do that? And that's what we see. Well, you need more training to get cut hair than you do to be a saddle police officer. Well, he put him. Yeah, we can beat that. We can beat the dead horse. Well, and that very well could be it, right? It just goes back into this. If you're in this situation, how are you going to react? Like when the Nisqually earthquake hit when I was here in 2001, I'd never been in an earthquake before, and I was the floor warden when I worked. I volunteered to be the floor warden when I was there because I'm former EMT and did search and rescue. I was like, sure, I'll be the floor warden. And after the earthquake, like the big joke on the floor was like, next disaster, I want to be with David, because like he was totally calm. And now I know in an earthquake, I'm going to be very, very calm, but I didn't know until that moment. I had an employee that worked for me. Then we did head count. We evacuated the building, did head count. They were missing, right? They were missing for a while, and then it came back all sweaty and stuff. We're all standing outside, and he ran in panic down 4 flights of stairs while the earthquake's going on, then got out on the street and kept running northbound from kind of close to where the Edgewater is. And then he came to some park. I can't remember the name of the park. And he said when he got to that, and that park was like a mile away. And he was just in full-on panic sprint run. And he said when he got to the park, that's when the brain was kind of like, dude, you stop. And then he walked back. He quit about 2 months later because his wife was like, I refuse to live somewhere. They had moved from a different city, and they went back to that city because his wife was like, I refuse to live in a city where the ground can move. And they left and they went back. There was another guy who was a floor warden, and like the earthquake's going on, and he walked. I'll never forget this. He walked out of his office. He was just in a total daze. Absolute daze. And he's just looking, and there's cracks forming in the walls, and there's dust coming down, and we're up on the top floor, and it's all skylights. It's all glass. It's all skylights. And all I could think to myself is, I'm going to see this guy get Cuisinarted before my eyes when this glass ceiling goes down. And I just screamed at the top of my lungs on my search and rescue voice, get back in your fucking office and get under your desk. Because I'm in the doorway. And of course, they tell you don't go in the doorway anymore. But I brace myself in the doorway because that's what they do. And I guess they say because the door can swing and start beating the crap out of you. And he snapped out of it and ran back into his office. The whole point is that, you don't know how you're going to react in a 6.8 earthquake until you're in a 6-point earthquake. The biggest thing that I learned in a 6.8, I never want to be in a 6.9. Never. That's the biggest thing I learned of being a 6.8 earthquake. There's some fundamental things that I accept in the world. The ground not moving is one of them. Wow, everyone here's talking about earthquakes. That's really cool. So I don't think people know how they're going to react, police officer or not, when a flaming piece of wood is thrown in their lap until somebody throws a flaming piece of wood in their lap when they're driving. I don't think anybody really knows how they're going to react. It was interesting. Yeah. Just think, we're about 10 years away for Duke because it's about every 30 years, right? So we're about 10 years away from the reset button and getting the next one. So if you're thinking about moving, in probably, I don't know, about 8 years. Anyway, I think it's about it. Yoda, I don't know, I'm feeling PugCam was a failure. I'm feeling PugCam was a failure tonight because Yoda, he's not even, snoring loudly. And he just passed out. And he is so smug and happy to be on that blanket and on the bed. Catherine, I totally agree with that. Jason, I can't. I can't imagine. I really can't. I certainly didn't work on anything long as that. Well, we'll continue PugCam, but this is probably the least animated and the least vocal Yoda has been. But for Pillow Talk, we will continue to have PugCam. But of course, I can't control what Yoda does or doesn't, and he's barely snoring tonight. So he's just sleeping. You can maybe hear a little bit. He's almost 17. We keep kind of feeling he's on borrowed time. He's almost, we kind of feel he's a little bit on borrowed time. Oh, there you go. A little move there. And a big sigh, a quiet one. He was snoring so loud this morning, you have no idea. I thought it was something totally different. Yeah, I'm well, the Future Crystals was there, right? You have somebody streaming there. So, Catherine, I don't know who was or wasn't there. And again, like I talked about earlier about the Pacific Northwest Youth Liberation Front, and there's some influence in Seattle. It's not anything like Portland, and the group, the E&D group, is trying to figure it out. The streamers are trying to figure it out. And I had planned to go out tonight. I actually had planned to do Black Indigenous Coalition on Friday. And Friday I got tied up. I couldn't get out, work. And that was a little self-inflicted. And then I just wasn't feeling it today. I didn't sleep well last night. I had some personal news last night, and it's just I'm gonna have to figure some stuff out. I guess the last thing I'm gonna close up on then is kind of like, where's the Tango gonna go? I've been talking to admins, talking to mods, talking to the researchers, talking to the editor. We've been wrestling, and I alluded kind of this last night, right? We did the follow up in the SPD numbers, and I kind of alluded to this last night, and we've made some decisions on where we're going to go as an organization, as a publication, as a source. I'm probably going to be streaming less in the field. It doesn't have anything, it really doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with Pacific Northwest Usable Liberation Front. Really, my talk about is a lot more Portland oriented than it is Seattle, but there is influence of that in Seattle. And I've heard both sides of the arguments, and I got into it. I'm not going to hash it out again. And that's not it, right? Because there's all this noise of like, well, and they've been vocal on Twitter, right? They trust me as a streamer, they like my approach as a streamer, and then people read so much stuff into that, right? He coordinates with him and blah blah. No, we don't coordinate. None of the streamers do coordinate with none of them. In part because they don't have a plan until they're kind of walking, so we don't know. And I've said so many times, I don't want to know. It's plausible deniability. It prevents bias on my part. It prevents me from going out, or it prevents me going, yeah, and not knowing what the destination is. And if you've watched the streams on more than one occasion, like they're going down some, Spog 816, great example of this, right? They're going down that alleyway, right? And I'm just on the stream like, I don't know what we're doing, I don't know where we're going. I just know I don't like the alleyway. This whole thing that got Mike Solon wrapped around the axle with me, right? The stream where they went to their home is the same thing. All right, I'm on there, I'm like kind of admiring the view and stuff, and he turns the camera, right? I'm turning the camera to show this beautiful view of the skyline up there, and once again I'm bitching about we going down this narrow road, we're in this alleyway, I don't like it, bad things happen in alleyways, what are we doing here, I don't know what's going on. I just know I just don't like where we're at. We don't coordinate. I'm not aware of it. I shouldn't speak for all streamers. Certainly the streamers I talk to, they don't coordinate. Streamers in Seattle were coordinating as streamers to kind of be like, okay, so we don't have 10 streamers at this and no streamers at that. So who's going to cover this and who's going to cover that? And that kind of fell apart. And I'm not going to get into why that fell apart. Jason, good night, man. Deborah, thank you. I appreciate it. Not everybody thinks that way, including people on the left. There's some people who don't like my commentary, or they don't like the fact they do commentary. They prefer I would just shut the fuck up and show the camera. There is a number of not issues, but the whole point of that is, and where I'm getting tired because I'm starting to go like this, so I can tell I'm fading. We're going to be probably doing less streaming the field. That isn't to say we're not going to be doing no streams in the field. It's not saying we're not going to cover any more protests. As I said, like 11.4, 11.5, like really in my head, like 11.3, 11.4, 11.5 is just going to be probably This was worth staying up for now, malcontents. He's dreaming. Oh yeah. He's running. Like, you can't see his legs because of the way he's laying. He is running. You can probably see his body twitching. His legs are going. Well, this is one active dream. Oh, you could probably just see like his front paw. You could probably just see a little bit of his front paw popping up. Oh my God, you could see my foot. Yeah, there's his front paw again. Hey, Renee! Renee from the Seattle Gay News is here. There you go. Finally, we got some pug cam action. He's listening to something in his dream. Look at the ear going. He's chasing something. He's listening to something. They think that dog dreams are just memories of of their past, that they're just reliving some memory. That's what they think. The ear twitching is fantastic. I would also think, being that how you doing there, Buttercup? He's almost 17, and so what I imagine is, like, in his dreams, he can hear and he can see, and he's experiencing things before the arthritis and stuff, and so I think that dreams are probably something that's good for him. And now we have pug noises. Of course, I'm getting ready to sign off, and now we have pug noises. Well, I guess he is awake. His eyes are open. Oh, yeah. Dude, you're all right, man. You're all right. Didn't mean to startle you. You're all right. All right, I'm going to go back to sleep now. I wonder what he was dreaming. It was friggin' fantastic. I made somebody's cat look. I know people were waiting. He's been so quiet tonight. It was totally great. I agree. He's been so quiet tonight, too. Normally, if you guys done Pillow Talks before, normally he is snoring away. And in prior Pillow Talks, right, we haven't had this production value. We haven't had the production value of Pug Cam in your chat and better lighting and better cameras. And yeah, we're trying to grow up. Anyway, back before Yoda break. That was a Yoda break. Renee, thank you for joining. As I was saying, we're going to stream less in the field, but that isn't going to say we're not going to not stream in the field. If you kind of go back, like a month ago, right, we're streaming 4, 5, 6 days a week in the field. Frankly, it's not sustainable for me. There's kind of like, I'm getting too old for this shit. The other thing that kind of happens is, particularly if things get even, just chippy, not even just spicy. If things just get chippy, let's say it finishes it up at 11:30. I get home 12:15. I might not fall asleep until 3 o'clock, right? Because I got the hormones going, right? And the brain likes those hormones, right? Those are Yoda, people have been waiting all night for you to be doing this stuff. And now here you go. We got full-on pug cam. Dude, why weren't you doing this an hour ago when we probably had a much bigger audience? Probably have like 5 people watching at this point. Hey, your union contract says you can't go out of frame, and people don't want to see your willy whacker, which is almost perfectly in center frame right now. The chuds are probably reporting the stream right now. Hey. You can't see his tail. What are you doing, bro? Yoda. I'm ignoring you, human. Why don't you just sit down? Stubborn little thing, aren't you? Come on. Yoda. Or you want to turn around? What do you want to do? I'm waiting to see what he's going to do. Poor thing. He doesn't have a lot of muscle tone anymore. He's just such an old man. There you go. Yeah, people want to really see that. That's what they want to see, Yoda. Here. You mind turning around the other way? Maybe this way. Not that way. This way. People want to see your butt. They want to see your puggy face. Dude, what are you doing? Yoda, I swear to God, if you give them the one-eye treatment, I'm going to go talk to your union rep about this. They don't want to see the one pug eye. Boom. There we go. All right. I'm trying to get through this part of telling you the future of the Tango. I keep only get as far as we're going to be streaming less in the field. That doesn't mean we're not going to be streaming, but it's really, really right. It gets back to what I was saying earlier. Get back is like 12:15. I might be up till 3 in the morning, and then I've got to be at work for 8. And that gets old fast, and that sucks a lot of energy out of me. So that's kind of part of it. We're going to be doing more journalistic stuff. And we're actually working right now. We've lined up some interviews. Renee, who's on the feed right now, Renee is actually aware. Renee and I we're not collaborating, but we're kind of doing something cooperatively with a story that's coming up. I actually need Renee. I had not solidified my interview on Wednesday, but we'll be showing that interview on Thursday, and I'm not going to get into what that is. We're talking to some other people, and then I have this thing. We still haven't been able to find Pinky. I know their name. That's the black woman that was talking to one of the organizers at the Support the Police rally. The two of them, both of them agreed, and I've had the woman, actually the organizer, like, she's reached out to me like, hey, when are we going to, and do you have that information? And my notepad got all soaking wet, and it's so frustrating. And I know that woman, I've talked with her before, not the other woman, Pinky. I've talked with her before a couple of times, and I've always been very impressed with her. She's very articulate, and they were having a great conversation, and that's why afterwards, I muted the camera, and was like, hey, I would love to get the two of you together again, to in an environment where there wasn't all that going on. And we want to do more of that stuff. It's less eyeballs. The protest, we do protest porn, we get 1,000 people watching. Spog You know, Spog March 9/7, 8, like 8/16, I know we had over 1,000 people, meaning just Facebook. We had one, I think it was 9/7. We had over 4,000 people watching on Periscope. It was just like, and I know we get way less eyeballs doing this, way less, but the quality of eyeballs are better. And I would rather have the quality eyeballs and grow. And doing the stuff that has the higher production value across the board. So Pillow Talk, higher production value, Studio 2, not as much stuff with just the static box drop in Studio 1. I think we're going to do probably a lot more of that stuff. I would love to do a lot more of what we did on Friday, what we did on Monday, what we did on Thursday, right? This journalism, right? Hey, we're going to come in with a story or 3 stories or 5 stories, and we're going to dive in and provide, tell you the story, and then I give my opinion analysis. I really want to co-host, and I talked about that earlier. There's only so much time I can fill as a Jewish white guy, and at the end of the day, I'm a Jewish white guy who is straight and very secure in their sexuality, talking, trying to talk about Black, Indigenous, person of color, and LGBTQIA plus issues. And I've reached the point when I know to just shut my mouth and listen and let other people talk and then digest what I hear and then be able to communicate it back in a way that I think people appreciate and can understand, and not be like all white saviory and stuff. And I think that I've reached a point where I can go, I can understand, but I will never understand, right? It's like, I get it, but I'm never going to understand the experiences that you're going through. Versus like, oh yes, I get you, right? Because I figured that out real quick. It's like, no, and it's just, and I won't understand, and I never will. But I think having a person that is a Black, Indigenous, or person of color, and I think having someone who's female, because I'm male, or somebody that identifies female. I'm not adverse to having, say, somebody who is trans and identifies female, but I think at the end of the day, having somebody who identifies as female is just going to lend. I think it's going to pull in more audience. It gives another voice. It counters my voice. I don't want somebody that thinks 100% like me. I don't want a clone. There's nothing interesting in that. I want somebody that's either left of me or somebody's right of me. I don't want to be, like long ago, Fox, they had this thing, Hannity and Combs. And Hannity and Combs, when they first came, it was like Brandy Cruz. When Brandy Cruz first started, and she did like her first few divides, and there were 2 people, right? And the divide was actually having 2 people with differing views sit down and talk. And it was kind of a flop because there was look, he's looking at the camera now. It was kind of a flop because no one ever kind of changed their minds in that. And not only that, there was like hardly any resolution, and it made bad I think at the end of the day for Brandy, it made bad TV. And I totally think that Brandy Cruz is bucking for something way bigger than Fox Q13 in Seattle. She just seems like, she wants to go to a bigger station in a bigger market or go national. And she's just gone full.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
In her pursuit to get there. And as somebody who appreciated her work and has watched this transformation for a year, it's, clout chaser. This is a term and streamer term, people that are out there because they're chasing, they want clout. They're obsessed with the number of likes and follows and how many people are watching and stuff. And like, if I was obsessed with that stuff, I'd have been out running around with the camera. I wouldn't be in here doing the studio stuff. But we want to get a co-host. And it's tough. It's really tough because for somebody, it's the time commitment. It's the, do we get along commitment? It's tough to find someone, right? And then we need to find somebody essentially that we trust, right? There's this element of trust. And then at the end of the day, there needs to be, some chemistry, not in the romantic sense, right? But there needs to be some chemistry between me and that co-host, or it just doesn't make interesting watching. If there's two people talking that seem to hate each other or don't get along, well, that's not interesting either. I was talking about Hanny and Combs a little earlier. Like when Hanny and Combs first started, it was watchable because and eventually what Combs got like a less and less and less and less of a voice, and then it just became totally unwatchable. And of course now Hannity is just,
These are Chut.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
yeah. So I don't know, Kimber, I don't know because I haven't been watching, but I have the phone. I always have the phone muted when I do this because I just don't. Because I don't know if you remember. Again, longtime malcontents may remember this. In the earlier streams, I'd have people like phone would be ringing or stuff or. Yeah, I guess Joey's got the feed of Ian Dede getting arrested tonight. And of course, Joey is right up there on the hill, so it's a lot easier for him to get up there. It's a longer trip for me to get up there. Anyway, we want to get a co-host, and I would actually love if we had a co-host for them to have their own voice, to develop their own show and give them an opportunity to use the channel. And again, we've talked to a couple of people, and there's some people that have expressed interest. And I think there's a degree of, oh, this sounds real easy. And then when they kind of get behind the curtain a little bit, and it's like, oh, wow, it's work. And I'm not saying that to be derogatory to anybody. No, in any way that's meant. It is work. And it's free work, right? You're not getting paid to do it. So we want to do a whole lot more of that, and that's when we'd pivot to. There's some other things that are coming up, but I'm not going to talk about until after the election because there's some things that we're going to be changing. It's all good change, nothing bad, but there's going to be some things that will be changing after the election. It's just the timing isn't right to do it right now. And it's like nothing, again, it's all good. It's nothing bad. Don't read anything into that. So, and I think that's it. Yeah, it sounds like I'm missing it in Seattle, and it sounds like I'm missing it in Portland. And there's other people out there, and they probably, are getting. And I'm not saying those people out there, Joey is not a clout chaser by any means. But there are some streamers that are clout chasers, nationally, and I'm not going to name names. I think people, or you don't know, right? They're obsessed with their likes and their follows and how many eyeballs they have. And everyone has their different style. And people appreciate again, I know there's people that don't like my style. They don't like the commentary, and there's other people that absolutely love it. I know when I watch streams, I generally like commentary. I like stuff being explained to me. And I know one of the things that people have commented on is, when things are, I talk kind of like the energy level or the emotion or what's going on, because I think there may be times people are watching on camera and things seem really crazy. And the reality is, you feel the energy and you can't pick that up on the camera. And it's like, nah, this isn't, it's yelling and shouting, but this is not crazy. And likewise, there may be things, where things may appear kind of a little quiet or calm, and it's just the feeling is this is a lit fuse that is just ready to pop. And last Saturday was a huge emotional roller coaster. It was huge. There's these moments of there are definitely moments where it was like, wow, this is just going to turn into. Then there were other moments where it felt totally diffused. And there was this one period was like, wow, it's really diffused. Everyone's really calm. And then this one.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
Went and just, turned everybody up. And it went from kind of like, wow, it's all chill, to like, oh my God, everyone's going to start bashing their heads in like the span of like 90 seconds because of literally the action of one person. And then there was, this one conversation between this woman who, said that she was dating somebody who was an SPD officer for 30 years and a man who was black who goes by the name of Ali. And then there was another individual that interjected another black man, and I really think he said the right things. And that was one, like, for me, that was one of the most emotional things I had ever streamed. I had to really, really center myself after that because so much pain, and you could just feel it. And you couldn't see all the faces around because I'm holding that thing to keep it and I'm listening, but I'm looking at the people around me, and it's just pain. Everything around is pain, and they were both in so much pain. It was really powerful, and those are the things I like to share because I think understanding the energy is really important. And I'll say it again, when things get really spicy, I learned from the master. I watched a lot of Eric Greatwood, and Eric Greatwood just gets into kind of this, very matter of fact when things get really spicy, on what's going on. He gets very, very crisp, and there isn't, it's just, flashbangs out, rubber bullets out, fireworks out. And that's literally Eric Greatwood. Those were the words he used, and I emulate that because, I like that. I think the other thing I made it or sort of is like, wow, they're moving us fast, or they're pushing hard, or, again, it gets back in that whole energy. Anyway, there'll be more kind of changes that are coming up. I think they're all good changes. And then I think as we get towards the end of the year, there's a little bit of a crossroads. I've kind of alluded to this is taking up more and more time, and it isn't just because I'm up here rambling and in bed with a pug. This is taking up more and more time, and it is taking up more and more resources. And as we get more eyeballs, the issues get more complicated. Again, things like DMCA takedowns. One of the things I like about doing this kind of studio work is nobody wants to steal this shit and put their name on it. Nobody. And so generally we do pillow talks or we do in-studio stuff. I'm not spending 2 to 4 hours filing complaints on the Kitties and the Andy Knows of the world and the Katie Records and Freight Broker. And, there was one person that kind of was like, they got a letter from a lawyer and that costs money. And guess what? They don't use our stuff anymore because then at that point it was like, oh no, he's not just some a-hole streamer. He actually has an LLC. And, which is why I was getting, you're fake. It's like, no, we're a media company. We've been doing, covering community events and stuff for years. This wasn't just diving into something. The narration part has been a journey, and this whole in-studio stuff. I can't even imagine looking back at some of the stuff, like the studio stuff we did 3.5 years ago. It must be so awkward and weird compared to where we're at now. And I know it can still be a heck of a lot better. I mean, what would be the other thing is that COVID just makes things really, really hard, right? When I'm in studio, we have a studio space, but then say to bring somebody in to be a production engineer, I can't pay someone to do it. But let's say somebody wants to like get practice at being, a production engineer, kind of, or a producer essentially. And they could get that opportunity, but then there's all the COVID protocols around it. And then, that person needs to get tested and it's 3 days before, and then they got to quarantine. And, because, I've got my SASET certification, SAG-AFTRA training, for the business. And so I need to adhere to those protocols as part of it. And then all that becomes money. And there's no way to cover it. And this isn't me crying, oh, send me Venmo. That's not the point of this. It's just, it gets back to, this isn't as easy as people think. And we're just coming to a crossroads. And there's some decisions are going to have to be made of kind of like, is this the stop? Not in the stop that we go off the air, but is this as far as we go with production value and what we're covering and what we're going to do? Or do we, continue to, move on a path of growth? And then if we move on that path, then what does that mean? And that's part of the reason why I want to pull back and do more studio work. Because if we're doing more studio work, then it kind of doesn't feel right. Then the next evolution, then it doesn't feel like, we're trying to benefit from the suffering and the misery in the world. So, but there's always going to be a place for streaming. Oh, Kelly C, yeah. Yoda gets his own camera now, Kelly C. I see that you're just on here now. Thanks, Shell. Much appreciated, Pam. Yeah. And, sometimes, Pillow Talk tonight, one of the mods was saying, one of the admins was saying tonight, the first time they ever saw one of my streams was on July 4, which is after Summer Taylor was murdered and Diaz Love was gravely injured. And I think I streamed about 3 or 4 times. And I remember I came back and we were in what we jokingly call the Starbucks room. And, I'm anesthetizing myself with beer so I can try to get myself to sleep. And I think I was up talking to like 4 or 5 in the morning. And I think a lot of people just couldn't sleep, right? There you go. Well, you got a good view of Yoda there now. And they were like, hey, that was the first one. Sometimes Pillow Talk for me is just open therapy session. It's me just trying to get stuff out. The good news is I really haven't seen too much that I feel was kind of like, traumatizing or awful. That's the other thing on streaming and on this, police officers deal with people and a lot, firefighters, kind of anybody in that EMS space. They're dealing with a lot of people who are just having the worst day of their lives in that moment. And that's draining, right? I mean, that... Hey, come here. Come here. No, not that way. Or fine. You want to go that way, you go that way. Oh my goodness, people love this. Yeah, but that's as far as you can go. See, I think he wants off bed. So I'm just trying to get him before
the cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
There we go. That was Yoda. Push the button. There you go, Bubble. All right, we have nothing in Pug Cam because I have a pug in my lap now because he's a Velcro dog. He literally hit the chud button. Good button to hit, buddy. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. I think he wants off to bed, and I don't know, maybe he needs to go outside one more time before he goes to bed. Be good to each other. I always kind of close up. It's weird. It's like the Pillow Talk. I never know how to close it. I really don't. I just close it with be good to each other, and there you got pug noises. I don't know if we'll stream tomorrow. I got a busy day tomorrow. Monday will be Studio 2, right? It'll be the weekend wrap up. And what's kind of popped up on the news cycle there. Oh my God, there you go. Velcro dog. Say goodnight, Yoda. Say goodnight, Yoda. No? What are you staring at? You've been staring at that for a very long time. Is it interesting? I don't see any food. Come to think of it, I don't see much of anything anymore. All right, malcontents. We're going to call it a night. Peace out. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's right. I got to do all my closing video stuff, and then we're going to say so.
The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile! You're the malcontent!
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontent Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a